meeting to order for Monday, November 7th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. All members of the council are present. Others include Jim Johnson, clerk treasurer, and Laura Dogan, our city manager. The second item is to approve the minutes of October 17th, 2022.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of 17 October 22.
Motion made by Mr. Wilson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Charbonneau. Discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Go back to Mr. Johnson. We have no one who signed up for comments by members of the public, so we'll move on. The next item is Fred and Ruth Carter Family Bench donation. We received a memo and a picture of the bench. It would be placed along the river, between the bandstand and the information booth. The council received a picture, and it will be engraved, let me see, it's granite, and it would be engraved, "You are the wind beneath our wings," and in loving memory of our parents, Frederick and Ruth B. Sal Carter. I know we have another bench down in that area along the river, so I think, council have any questions on this? Then I guess if there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to accept the donation of the bench with the engraving from the Carter family.
Motion has been made by Ms. Pedersen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, is it when it's gonna be installed?
Between the bandstand and the,
No.
oh, when?
As weather permits.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're gonna try to do it before the end of this year, but they might have to wait till the spring.
That's what,
oh, okay, I thought you said, okay.
no, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay. Next item is the reservoir cover bid selection process. We did receive a memo, or a letter that was addressed to the city manager. It appears Aldridge and Elliott, they were overseeing the bidding process. And it looks like only one company out of two bids was qualified. And it looks, this is to replace the reservoir cover up behind the elementary school, behind the elementary school, up there.
And the liner.
And the liner,
Yes.
the cover and the liner, and the amount was $364,395. And the company is, where was the company here?
RTD and.
Yep, RTD, I almost said Palin Hill, but it's
Yeah.
RTD Enterprises was the company. When will this would be done next year, because we're out of season now, I'm assuming.
Yes, and
Maybe Tom can address maybe the timeline?
That'd be up to the company, but I'm sure it'll be, when warmer weather gets here next year. Certainly it's not gonna happen this month.
No, I didn't think so. It'll have to be completely drained, which means pressure issues, correct? Kinda like the water tower?
No, I don't think it'll be as bad on that side.
Okay,
We actually reduced the pressure right at the bottom of the hill there. We put a relief valve there. So it really, the only way it'll build, if it builds pressure, it will relieve it there. We shouldn't lose pressure. And the tower controls from the tracks this side anyway.
Okay.
Most of the hills.
okay. Now I was just trying to think ahead, knowing we had some concerns when the water
Well, the
tower
only
was
reason we
being,
had issues is because we had 3 or 4 weeks in a row, we had power outage.
I know, which was unusual.
And we were running off pump pressure. As soon as we lost power at the pump, we lost pressure in the line.
Right. Unusual to have those kind of power outages with nice weather.
And we had a backup generator, but, that little lapse in between it didn't take much.
Right, okay. Questions from council members?
I had one, and it was strictly, your second item was job superintendent must be consistent and on the job at all times. That would come from RTD? not
No,
us.
that'd be A&E overseeing the
Oh,
job that
okay.
RTD's doing, yes. And they'd have, he'd probably be a resident that usually does jobs out of the field.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Then we would need a motion to accept the recommendation of Aldrich and Elliott to award the new reservoir cover and liner to RTD Enterprises in the amount of $364,395.
Mayor, I'll make that motion. Oh,
Great. Mr. Bashaw made the
Okay.
motion,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mr. Wilson. Discussion? Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, how long does this say it's gonna take to actually do the work? And, where's the money coming? Is that coming out of the general budget, or?
It's in the water budget.
It was actually the ARPA funds.
ARPA funds, that's right, we're using ARPA funds.
Yes,
That's right, I forgot about the ARPA
Yeah.
funds.
Thanks.
And then the timeline,
Boy, I was here when they did the last one. I'd say probably a week, guessing. That was put on back in 1999, so I'm kind of dating myself. So I'd say at least a week.
I thought 2000, but 1999, you're right.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
I'll go-
I was just thinking, as a Newport City elementary school employee, would it be considered that it's not done like while we're at school, or how would it affect the school?
It won't affect.
It won't affect the school.
We'll try to do it when school's out.
Basically, that was my question. It doesn't sound like it's gonna, the end user's not gonna notice
No,
anything.
Okay, good. We'll move on. We did vote on that, right? Yes,
Yes.
because I opened it up to questions. My mind tonight, must be the colder weather coming in. Okay. The next item is the NVDA board appointment. We need to appoint a new member from either the council or planning commission to be a member of the NVDA board. I stepped down because I couldn't make the Thursday meetings anymore, and I felt it wouldn't be fair to the city to continue being on the board. And so we have two members, it's the city manager and normally a member of the council in the past. It doesn't have to be a member of the council, it can be a member of the planning commission if someone wishes. And so, we can have the council members think on it and, see what they think. About it.
I would just mention the commitment is about one meeting every other month. The meetings are generally, they've been remote for the past couple of years. Going forward, they may be in person, and they usually schedule them somewhere within the 3 county regions, because NVDA covers Orleans, Essex, and Orleans County. When they do meet in person, they usually have a nice dinner, and it's a social event to interact with similarly situated municipal officials, usually very pleasant. And as you know, NVDA is the economic development arm and regional planning commission, so those are the types of issues that are discussed. There's no homework, there's no pressure outside of the meetings itself.
The only homework is to read the materials before the meeting
Yes.
generally.
Yep.
And they're very good about sending them out, I think, a day before usually,
They're
or a
very
few
good.
days before.
Yep.
And so, and part of right, that's
It's
basically,
been on a long time.
well, I've been doing it for 20 years roughly.
But they had,
But it's just conflicted with my
Yeah.
schedule on Thursdays now.
So, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Yeah, so besides getting dinner and
Mhm.
socializing, what is the kind of business that takes place at these meetings? I mean, what's the actual work of the meeting?
approval of regional plans, staying apprised of their grants, their brownfields grant recipient. They give updates on the movement that's taken place. They do property rehabilitation and redevelopment, for example, the Yellow Barn project at Hardwick. the Bogner project here.
Mhm.
They give support to the Northeast Kingdom Development Corporation. So those are the types of the subjects that are discussed.
Is it informational or is it
Um,
action type of meeting?
Very little action. They do have a budget, so their budget needs to be approved. They do have board officers that have terms that need to be voted on.
Okay.
That's the bulk of it, I think.
But approving municipal plans is
Yeah.
one of the big roles of
Right.
that. Other questions about the board? Comments? They're not meeting we could hold off to the next meeting.
Sure.
We
No,
want
there's
to
no
give people a
rush.
chance to think on it.
Absolutely, and the other thing the bylaws state is that you're okay to coast as long as you appoint somebody within 60 days of the annual meeting in March.
Right,
So you're fine. Just wanted to put it on the agenda so it was on your radar.
right.
Should we table it for,
We could table it to the next meeting
Yeah.
if you want.
Yeah.
So we would take a motion on that.
I'll make a motion, we table it till the next council meeting and inform the planning commission also that they could appoint a member. And they might be interested in it. So I'll make a table it for till the next meeting.
Motion made to table it until the table of this item to the next council meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second made by Mr. Wilson, seconded by Mr. Charbonneau. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. The next item is the annual assignment of restricted, committed, and non-assigned funds for FY 21-22. And I will turn it over to the city manager. We did receive a spreadsheet, and this is basically a recommendation per the auditor.
Yes, it is. So what you've got in front of you on that spreadsheet is our balances effective June 30th, 2022. What I would point out is over the years, our committed funds have grown. When we first started this spreadsheet, I think we had about 13 line items. As we've gotten more sophisticated I want to use the word better at managing our budget, we've been able to expand the committed funds, and we're pleased about that. What you'll notice is in the unassigned number, there's 107,000. In that number, I've always been pleased about the number that has been unassigned, because as you know, that's what we like to refer as our emergency fund in the event of an unanticipated catastrophe. It's nice to have some in there, but I'm also pleased to see that I think we're now up to over 20 line items that we've been able to commit funds to, which helps our taxes in the next fiscal year. So these are basically unspent funds, or restricted or committed. And I've got the definitions on the memo and at the bottom of the chart.
Questions from council members? Nobody has any questions on it? Then we would, if there's no questions, we would need a motion regarding the restricted, committed, unassigned funds. Just to let everyone know, if they're not familiar with the term, this was on the website, so it was out there. Restricted means basically amounts that can be spent only for specific purposes because laws, regulations, or externally imposed conditions by grantors or creditors. That's restricted. Committed is amounts that can be used only for specific purposes determined by a formal action of the council. Assigned are amounts that are designated by management for a particular purpose, and then we have unassigned.
Mr. Mayor, what exactly are you doing with the unassigned funds?
That would be the 107,000 would be, basically it's for if there's an emergency.
Okay.
Say you had a, I don't know,
Catastrophe.
a
and so on.
catastrophe,
Right.
say that the entire traffic light by the Gardner Park fell down and we had to get a new traffic light, that would be considered an emergency. Other type of emergencies.
I'll make that motion.
A motion's been made to accept the audit reassignment by Mr. Charbonneau. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bashaw. Discussion? Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you. So at the next meeting, now that we've got this, at the next meeting, we plan to present the proposed budget for next operating year. Now that we have this solidified, we'll move on to the next level.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment? I realize this is extremely minor, but I'm glad to see that money's being set aside from the coins from the washers and dryers at Proudy Beach for future replacement, since we had so much trouble with it before. I realize it's a minor thing.
Well, it's big for us, and we appreciate your comment, because that's something that we worked on over the summer to make it better, to make it clearer, and to meet the expectations the city council set up for Proudy Beach. And I think that the council will be pleased with the work that was completed over this year.
Okay. Moving on, the next item is Gardner Park Corrective Action Plan Strategy and Funding. We did receive a memo from the city manager. I think, based upon the memo, I think the council understands my position regarding the umbrella program. I'm still 100% opposed to it, mainly because we would be giving up a city facility to a third party, and there's too many unknowns with a third party, no matter what the third party, who the third party is. My conversations with some people regarding if they fold in 5, 10, 15 years, and they had liens against them or creditors, well, the park would be one of those things considered when they liquidated assets, you know, per se. And that's just, to me, that's too much of a risk. You know, I'm just not a fan of the umbrella program, especially a city facility that is almost 100 years old. And it would be, once it's gone and to a third party, it's that way forever. You'd never get it back. And that's just something I can't support. I just wanted to let the council know that, my take on it. I know we still have to come up with a funding source, and my recommendation is we could, I mean, it was, let's see, it's 309,000
Yeah, but,
to do it. Well, we could do a 10-year budget item, or, you know, a loan. I mean, we get loans for vehicles, just about, or at least whatever. You think about it, 30,000, say, for 10 years or even 11 years. It's not a
Well, if it's 15 years, the payment would be somewhere between 25 and 30,000 a year.
15 years. Which I think is, I could see maybe if it was a $20 million cleanup project, or $5 million or something like that, but for 300,000, I just can't see the city giving up Gardner Park to a third party.
No.
There's too many unknowns, and just don't feel comfortable with something like that. That's just, I wanted to let them know where I come from. I'm anxious to hear what other people think.
the mayor's not standing alone. I've sat through the umbrella meetings, and I don't like some of their rules where we would have to give up basically permanent ownership of Gardner Park. I mentioned when we had the meeting with MWA, and everybody, well, this is great. No, it's not so great, and I think we might be lynched in the street if we gave up any part ownership of the park, even though we know what's underneath it all. So, I threw it out at that time that I think we ought to see if we can come up with funding, borrow it over, I said 10 years, but if it's a 15-year loan, 25,000 per year, and we always maintain ownership of the park, so that's the way I'm leaning towards it. Brella is, they're set in concrete, they're not gonna change this rule that, the only way we can get their grant is if we give up, and not just partial ownership, ownership of the park, so I told them in that meeting I wasn't in favor of it, so.
And I haven't heard from any resident that I've spoken with in favor of it.
Oh no, I've talked to people every day and they said, no, don't do it, so they'd rather us take out a loan like we do for a lot of things and, go that route.
And the one sentence that stuck out of this whole thing is that either way, all the duties and responsibilities and maintenance will remain with the city.
Yeah.
So there'll be a piece of land that we won't own, but we'll be responsible for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not even a sure thing to get the Brella grants. It's a bid process.
Right.
So I think, Mr. Mayor, you're dead on, you know.
Yeah. And
City property will take care of it.
And it was also mentioned too that, if we gave it over to a third party and they willed it back to us or however, well, if in 30 years, you know, everything in the park comes bubbling up, guess what? That third party is not responsible. We would be responsible to fix it because of the rules, so I think there's 3 of us that are not in favor.
Will this work with the timeline if we pay it ourselves?
I think, and Mike is here to help.
I think at this point, they haven't opened up for public comment on the corrective action plan.
Right.
There is a schedule that's in the documents that we tried to have it be an aggressive schedule because we wanted to try to do construction. But I think if the city were to comment that on this plan and indicate that the schedule really needs to allow for a town meeting consideration and a vote, and then the weather, again, getting back into a construction season, I think that you could adjust that schedule.
Is that a document that the council can see? Because we haven't seen any of that information, you know, as far as timelines, schedules, or anything related. You know, we haven't seen anything. It's almost like, I hate to say it, we're being kept a little bit in the dark, you know, and I just think that we need to be a little more informed. I mean,
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, and to be honest with you, you had the representative from the EPA here and gave a very excellent presentation, and I don't think anyone's been kept in the dark throughout this entire project. We've tried to be very upfront about it. There is a draft plan. At this point, it's still a draft. The first 23 pages of that draft has a schedule in it, and it's like a 500-page document, but most of it is testing and backup. So the first 23 pages is really a summary of the corrective action plan, and the schedule is in there. And so I would, Laura could certainly provide that to you.
And I actually think it's on the DEC's website as well, but I'm sure I have a copy of that, and I'll forward that document on.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, just, this whole concept came about to try to reduce the cost to the city. That's the only thing that the city or Laura and others were trying to look at, is how could we get grant funding to help support some of this additional cost. And this was the only option that the engineers had come up with, is that they were familiar with, there had been similar types of transactions. So this is nothing that anybody was proposing to do, but the theory was we wanted to provide the city council with some options about how to approach this problem. So I certainly respect everybody's opinion, but I just want to say that the whole concept was to provide you with some options.
actually, it's probably more of like, I think, an observation on my part, or just how I'm reading things. And then I do actually have a question. So the Berlin program appears to me that it was designed for basically commercial property, so that that industrial places that, became contaminated, that it was a useless piece of property because it was contaminated, how could something happen to make these properties useful again? And it makes sense to me for commercial properties. I mean, somebody owns a property, for whatever reason, back in 1940, the rules were different than they are now, the property's contaminated. So the entity that owns that, for whatever reasons, is going out of business, it's gonna whatever, their property is worthless, and we've got, there's a brownfield there, it's contaminated property, nobody wants it, so you've got idle property. So if somebody comes with the Berlin program was instituted, it gives the incentive for another commercial entity to purchase that property, rehabilitate it, and they can operate without having the liability of it. That makes perfect sense to me, because you can't undo something really that happened 40 or 50 years ago. So that's a commercial or, for-profit entity that's moving along 30, 40 years down the road, if somebody wants to retire, the property gets sold. It gets sold on to another commercial entity. So this is just because it goes on, which makes perfect sense to me. Municipal property, to me, doesn't fit that scenario. Because once your facility, whatever it is, in our case, a municipal park, goes out of the ownership of the city and goes to a third party, it's my understanding from the presentation that property can never come back to the city, ever. So you're giving it, we give it, sell it, whatever we do to a third party to sort of skirt around the fact so we don't have to pay for our own cleanup, we can let everybody else pay for it. And then, for whatever reasons, this third party, whoever it is, ceases to exist. Then what happens? The city can't have their property back, and this other entity owns it, and they can sell and do what they want with it. So it doesn't strike me as that it's quite the same thing as a commercial piece of property being cleaned up and a municipal facility, a valuable municipal facility, using the BRELA program to get cleaned up. It doesn't jive in my mind very well. Not that I want to spend, $300 and some odd thousand on a whim, but it just, if I step away and just try to look at it objectively, it doesn't make sense to me. The other question so that was just my observation for anybody who's interested in it. My question was, if the city were to go down the BRELA program, say, okay, we're going to sell this to XYZ organization for $1, so that we transfer the ownership at that time. Am I correct?
We transfer the property.
Okay, we transfer the property. That entity then applies for a competitive grant, which they may or may not get.
That's correct.
If they do not get that grant, are they still enrolled in the program because they applied?
I can't answer that question.
Okay, because then they got a property, they have no money to clean it up, the city no longer has its facility, and everybody's a loser.
Right. I think there's all kinds of legal issues that you
Yeah.
can get into. Laura's already given some discussion, deep discussions with the attorney, so it would.
There's not an
have
answer,
to take
yeah,
care of,
I
right.
understand that.
And,
Okay.
and to your first point, which is very well taken, I think that both the state and the EPA are providing a liberal interpretation of the law in order to allow municipalities access. And I think you're right, that it really is a commercial development. They broadly define a development, so building a new playground and taking care of that problem there constitutes a development.
And this decision, if we chose to go that route, it would have to be a voter decision.
Yeah.
It's not a decision of the city council to give up a 100-year-old park. That would be a voter, it would have to be a warned item, like I think you said town meeting, or.
Well, I was talking about for your budget purposes.
Oh,
If
for
you're
budget
gonna do a loan,
purposes,
you'd
oh,
have
for
to do a
a
loan.
loan, but anyway, I don't think it's a council decision to give up, I can't remember how many acres Gardner Park is. It's not like the little sliver we did by Newport Auto Body, that was just a 100 feet by 100, not even 100 feet, I forget. That was a tiny little unused piece of land that the city had no record of how they even got it. This is a major facility, and so, to me, that would have to go to the voters of the city in order, that wouldn't be a council decision, even if we did do it.
And I believe now we're kinda under the gun in a way, aren't we? Now that the EPA has done their part, we are committed to clean that up now,
No question.
yeah, so,
My feeling on it is the Barilla program has its place. I'm not sure that place is municipalities though. And the fact that we can never get that property back is what's not sitting well with me.
Can I ask, when we think about who might be responsible for the damage that exists in that park, is there somebody other than the city who is liable for the causing that damage,
Nope.
that we could sue them?
Nope, it was a dump,
No.
it was a dump, it was the city dump. They burned over there, they buried stuff, and then from there it went over to where the recycling center is, and then from there it went to the Netto landfill to what's now Casella. That's kind of the timeline of the landfill, am I correct in my history? Because I can remember my mother saying she went with her father to Gardner Park to the dump. And, yeah, and then from there, I remember as a kid going to the landfill, not landfill, they burned all the trash. It was off where the recycling center is, I remember that. And then after that, it went to Netto's. I guess I'm dating myself a little bit, but.
And to be honest, converting landfills or dumps as they were to recreational areas once they were capped was fairly common
Yes,
throughout New England, so it's not unusual to run into that.
you're absolutely correct there. Tom?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know, I know from the beginning of all this, initially, the playground was always definitely the hot spot. Quote me, Mike, if I'm wrong, but I can't remember if it was Site 2, was the softball field behind the information booth was also unsure of. And initially, when this all started, we were looking at 800 to $1 million or more if that other field hadn't passed. So, you know, when we started thinking about funds, well, where are we gonna come up with that kind of money? That's where this all started. Of course, the cost has reduced quite a bit from different scenarios, but initially, that's why this all got played out. Because that was a very big number.
And I know the key for the rest of the park is don't go below 18 inches.
Something like that.
Yeah, I know, well, that's what
18
the
inches.
lady from the EPA said 18 inches, so I got nervous that same night when Robert Gosselin said he was planting trees. So I talked to him, I emailed him that night after the meeting, said, I hope you're not going below 18 inches. And he says, no, because that would, as the lady said from the EPA, open up the rest of the park.
but in the last meeting I sat in for Brella, we were thinking where the playground is, but their guidance was no, the whole park would be turned over.
Oh, for the Brella, yeah, it's the
Yeah,
whole
for-
park.
To get the Brella grant, we give up the whole park, and then, no matter, even if the third party took it, and down the road, suddenly, everything starts bubbling up over by the grandstand, we, as a city, are responsible for it. Even though right now, everything is passed. Down the road, if anything else comes up, it wouldn't be that third party. The city will always be responsible for the repairs, so,
Okay.
So I'm now wondering, since it was common practice to cap landfills and make a park, why it hasn't been talked about before in New England.
Because what triggered it was having to dig in that area, correct?
I
Knowing the
think so.
history?
We can't be the only municipality having an issue with this.
I'm sure we're not.
No, there's probably a lot of them that just happen to hear.
And it depends on how they funded them. I mean, this particular, we ran into this because of the federal funding involved with grants. So were you to just go out there and do what you were doing, we never would have crossed that bridge.
But right, the grant required the environmental aspect in the studies, that's correct.
For what it's worth, I'm not in favor of turning that over to a third party either, from where I sit. To turn a park that size over to somebody and never be able to get it back.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody in this city would vote in favor of that. I mean, and then we'd have to maintain it for 100 years, as long as, or whatever it is, pay all the expense, but we don't own the property.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when that park was built in 1939 and 40, that was dedicated in the memory of a former mayor of this city. And to just say, no, we don't want it anymore, somebody else have it, that, I don't believe that would ever fly if it came to a public vote.
Bless you.
I don't know who's on there, but maybe, can I mute them?
Can you mute them?
So we're gonna put a vote on this.
Actually, yeah, do that, Laura, mute.
How's that? Better?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So there really, I don't think we really need a vote, we just need a direction that the city manager can look into, or the city clerk can look into their 10 or 15-year borrowing.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. No problem.
I wouldn't mind having a vote, because then I can go back to the DEC and confirm for them
Oh,
that we're not going down this route. And the other thing that I would like to do, I don't know if it's appropriate to do it now or wait till after the vote, but I just wanted to acknowledge and thank MWA for stepping forward even with all this discussion. Cause that was I think a big gesture on their part. They wanted to demonstrate good neighbors, and it's a big ask. As I mentioned, we had checked with a couple of different entities that would fit the bill, and I thought it was very big of MWA to step forward, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. They knew that it would be a lot of thought put into making the decision, which it was, and now we have a direction. So I appreciate that, because that means we get to move on to the next step, so we know what we have to do. But that's why I would like a vote, just so we have confirmation in the record,
okay,
so I can
Yeah.
bond.
I agree with Laura, I think you need a vote, just so it's on the record, and opposed to that.
right. Okay, so then the motion would be,
I would move that we direct the city manager to move forward with investigating other funding sources for the cleanup of the park, other than umbrella.
Look into
makes sense.
financing, just saying.
What?
Look into financing
Yes,
for the loan.
finance, that's what I'm saying.
so a motion was made, is there a second?
Second.
Made by Ms. Pedersen, second by Mr. Wilson, discussion?
I just wanna say that I, really thank you guys for taking the time and effort to really talk about this. You know, I've been passionate about this playground for years now, and I know this has been a snafu along the way, a big snafu along the way. But to listen to you talk openly about it and express your thoughts and ideas, and to still hopefully put that playground like up there so that the community can have that, it just makes my heart happy, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's bigger than the washing machines.
And I know the time and effort that you and others have really put into into the park, and so much appreciated. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, is Ms. Dogan's memo on the website, or can I get a copy of it?
It's on the website.
It is, up.
Yep. If you need anything, just let me know. I'll be
Okay.
around.
Okay, great.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, the next item is assign the Public Works negotiation team. What is the timeline?
Well, first I wanted to get the team put together. We've gotten the required letter, so it'll be happening this fall and winter. Hopefully, the last time, we haven't done it since 2019. And that generally, we usually, if the pattern holds true, we probably would be resolved by March. So you're probably having a meeting or two a month. Not a lot of preparation, we do all the heavy lifting, but we need 2 members of the council to give us coaching and guidance. So there's a bit of a commitment. As you know, we've got the police negotiation is happening now as well. So that's pending. And we get to do 2 at a time, which is unusual. We're doing 2 at a time because of, I believe COVID had something to do with that. And change in union for the police. Normally we do one year and then the other one the next year. So we're in an unusual situation to have 2 at the same time.
Yeah. I'd like to throw out the one we're doing right now, Kevin and I mean, they worked around the teacher's schedule so that, you know, we started at 3:30 in the evening,
Yeah.
and then, so,
Do you foresee it going into March?
Hard to know. It's, you know, sometimes we always ask, how many meetings do you think it's gonna be? It's really hard to anticipate. You sat on them when we thought they were resolved and then they continued.
Right.
But I think it would be wise to plan on somewhere around 6 meetings. I really can't anticipate better than that. I don't wanna mislead anybody. I know that it's God's work, as they say. It's hard work, but it's gotta be done.
Right.
If there's flexibility in the scheduling, I can make it
Yeah.
work.
We'll make it work. Thank you. So you got 1.
So you're like after 3:30, right? 3:30 or something like that, Chris?
3:30-ish, if not a little bit later.
Okay, because if that's what ends up working, I can do it if nobody else wants to.
Well, I don't wanna commit
Yeah.
only because as of town meeting, I will be done.
Oh,
And so I don't wanna commit.
okay.
And that's why I was asking the timeline. And I won't be running for reelection.
Wow. That's a big announcement.
Yeah. And so
That's-
that's why I was asking for the timeline.
Wow.
And
That
so
would be quite a last hurrah. But
I
that's
did all but maybe 3 in my 26 years of negotiations.
Yeah.
And I think I've done my fair share of negotiations.
You've done your share of being the mayor.
And
That's a
so,
big announcement, Mayor Manette.
but I just wanted to have that out there, so that's why I didn't commit.
Yeah.
And so, okay. So we have Melissa and Chris. Did you commit, Melissa? No?
If we can, I'd say, he and I are probably on pretty close to the same schedule, so if it can accommodate us, I can do it, but
Okay. I'll run with it.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
did she say yes or no?
The Chris and Melissa.
Okay.
Thank you both. I'll be in touch.
Okay. Moving on, new business. The new business I have is kudos to the rec department, the town for the successful Saturday Halloween event. I did enjoy, and I think Melissa did too, dressing up for the library, giving out candy. I was saddened to hear about what happened Cabbage Night to all those wonderful pumpkins. Really an inferior. Mike brought his kids trick-or-treating, and so when I asked him, is it true, and he said, yeah, I said, and that just, it's infuriating that you have something looking so nice, and people put a lot of effort into those carvings to have it destroyed. It's kind of like a gut punch a little bit, but I just wanna give kudos. I think it was successful on Main Street with all the kids and all that, and so I think it was, and just like Chili Fest, the weather was gorgeous for this event too, you know, and it's just lucked out weather-wise, and so I just want to give kudos to all the work that went into it.
Nice. And did you had numbers of people that went into the library?
The library, well, between parents, grandparents, and kids trick-or-treating, it was what, 625?
Yeah, it's 26, something like that.
626 people came into the library, because they were clicking for everybody coming in,
Nice.
and so it was a good event. That's all I had on new business. Mr. Johnson? No. Mr. Charbonneau? No. Mr. Wilson?
No?
That's all I had, Annie.
I think if people bear with me, I would just like to sort of say a little bit more about Halloween. that it was just a pretty amazing 3 days. I mean, it all spilled over onto actually Halloween night also. There was a lot of people out. And partly the weather probably had something to do with it, but we do between 150 and 160 trick-or-treaters at our house. Usually, we did 243 this year. And something that I thought was really interesting, which I was actually, it doesn't bother me, I'm pleased about it, we had a lot of teenagers. And in the spirit, dressed up, out with friends, just having fun. And I know sometimes people get annoyed when teenagers are too old. It doesn't bother me at all. I can afford, a fun-size Milky Way to give a teenager. So it was really nice to see. It was a good feeling to see both the kids, the parents, the older kids. And we had one little girl who came to our house last year, came back this year with her parents, and her parents informed me that she had a different costume this year, but she was really into like witches. She liked the whole witch thing going on. She was little. And we had this book of spell that opens up and it gives spells and stuff like that. And she watched that, and then she turned around and she looked at the mayor, who was on traffic control on the road, and looked at him and said, "I am a real witch and I cast a spell on you." We don't know if it's an evil spell or a good spell. We don't know.
She just said she has the power and cast a spell on me.
And I don't know if Travis is still on. Yes, he is still on. I want to thank the Newport PD. They did a great job on patrol on Sias Avenue, because as we know, we have a ton of traffic. We're not on the sidewalk side of the street, and so they did a really good job of keeping traffic slowed down and keeping an eye on things. So thank you for the PD and the guys who are out, and girls or women, who were out patrolling that night. It's very much appreciated. So
we bagged for 200 because I joined with the kids who were next door, and then no one ever came to my house. They all went to her house, so I joined, and we bagged 200 bags.
Bagged 200.
And when we ran out, we're desperate. We actually had a stash for us, and we gave all that.
That too.
So it was a fun night.
It was.
We just started Saturday and carried through. It was
all the organizations that were doing things, because it was just a really big weekend. So thank you, everybody.
Any other new business?
No, I'm just still on Halloween.
Anything new?
Just the same. Pumpkin Palooza was amazing. We could barely walk down Main Street. All the businesses that contributed, and it just seems like the community really got together for this, and I'm hoping that positive vibe just keeps going.
Any new business, Laura?
No, thank you.
No? Okay. We'll move on. Old business, Mr. Johnson.
Well, as everybody knows, you're supposed to be voting tomorrow. For those of you who didn't mail in a ballot, I got almost 800 mail-in ballots so far. I'll probably get some more tomorrow. Anyway, I don't know if I'm behind the times. Have the light bulb been changed in the street lights, Tom?
The light bulb in the street light?
The street lights, are the bulbs brighter?
Well, we converted, yeah, some aren't. The ones that are brighter, we converted to LEDs. Oh God, it's probably been a couple of years now.
Okay, so I'm behind the times.
Sorry, Jim.
I'm behind the times. But I want to tell you, my wife and I were driving down the street last night in the dark, and that street light lights the whole front of that library up, just like it was daylight.
I've done that before. You can see
And
the
you
door.
can actually see people in the crosswalks.
It's
Right,
really
so
nice.
I didn't realize you changed, I don't know where I've been, must be asleep, I don't know.
Just not out at night.
That's true, I don't want to.
Any other old business?
None for me.
No? Mr. Wilson?
It's not old, it could be new. Veterans Day, Friday, 10 o'clock here in the gymnasium, hopefully.
I don't have anything. Do you?
No.
No, thank you.
Okay, the next city council meeting will be Monday, Monday, November 21st, 2022, 6:30 PM here. Now we need a motion to adjourn at 19:19.